Good evening, everyone, and very welcome to SEPS. We have, okay, very good. The last speaker is coming. So let's start. We have. I'm very pleased to introduce the event of today. This is a SEPS CDP policy workshop. It's part of our series, and tonight we are going to speak about InvestEU. So I'm sure many people in this room know that the Commission published the midterm evaluation of InvestEU a couple of weeks ago. So it's a really great time to take stock of what is in the evaluation, but also to hear from the main stakeholders their views. And another reason why this is actually a good moment to have this conversation is that at least here in Brussels, the debate about the next MFF are just intensifying. And of course, when we speak about the MFF, the question comes about the future of InvestEU. But we'll come to this in a moment. So we have an excellent lineup of speakers. I'm really pleased to welcome all of them. I would like to start the meeting of tonight by giving the floor to Elena Flores. She's Deputy Director General at DG ECFIN, European Commission, and she will tell us what are the key insights from the midterm evaluation. Elena, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me, and please stop me if I speak too long, because there are always too many things to say about this very interesting InvestEU. I think it's the right moment to take stock. I have to say that the midterm evaluation came really not so much at the midterm, at least not for many of the implementing partners, because we almost just finished the guarantee agreements with a lot of them at the moment of the evaluation, but it come midterm since the start of the program. So I say that because somehow has an influence on what you can reach as conclusions from the evaluation. But it's very interesting for what you said, that now it's time to discuss what next and what we can learn from the current experience and how we can shape the next MFF in the best possible manner. So with here the audience, I know that everybody knows very well this InvestEU, so I'm not planning to describe, but I wanted to remind kind of the key principles, because that's also important when looking forward. The first one is that this is an umbrella framework. So just to remind that we brought together 13 instruments that were working on their own before. And this approach of umbrella framework and going to kind of single type of funds or single type of instruments, I think it's very much in the current debate. So in a way, InvestEU is a bit of a precursor of that approach. So we can see what we take from that. Then the open architecture. So for the first time, we have this open architecture. We value that very positively, and I will come back to that. It is a market-based and a policy-driven instrument, and this is also very important to keep for the next designs. Let's say policy-driven because we define ex ante the 4 windows and the policy priorities, and also because it is flexible enough to integrate new policy priorities. Example, Repower EU, but also others. So this is also a very interesting feature of the instrument. And market-based, that's demand-driven. And since we want to fill market gaps, we think that this is a very interesting approach as well. And it also introduced this member states compartment, which opens also some important flexibility in terms how this instrument can be funded by other funds that may come from somewhere else, and the member states can redirect to this type of instrument like InvestEU. And in particular, in the current case, is from Recovery and Resilience Facility. So that's the kind of the 4 features that I think are important when looking forward. Then in terms of policy objectives, well, it's very well known that the focus is in green and digital transition. It is also very much to support research, development and innovation. Also the startups and the scaling up of the startups. I would also mention the boost of competitiveness, and this is something that is now even more in the forefront of the policy priorities. And final kind of priority that I would mention is the for the contribution or the further integration of the EU capital markets, where capital markets union is something that we all know should be done. There are a lot of difficulties on the regulatory supervisory side, but we also know that developing certain types of financial products can help in building this capital markets union from kind of bottom-up approach. So that's for that. And when we look at the implementation and what has happened, well, as you know, we have the three components of the InvestEU: the fund, the advisory hub, and the portal. And in terms of advisory, sometimes we forget a bit about that, but we think it's particularly important, and the evaluation also shows that with the number of implementing partners that we have in the advisory, we have been able to really go into the three priorities that the advisory has, which is number one, to advise in projects, to help developing the projects. Number two, capacity building. Number three, market development. And with the evaluation, we see that across the advisory interventions, the InvestEU has managed to really cover these three very important areas that are, the three of them are really necessary for helping the implementation of InvestEU. In terms of the fund, just to give you a couple of numbers, as you know, the total budget for the fund is 31.6 billion. By now, or say end September, we have already implemented about 26.12, so 84% of the available guarantee is already signed, which is a very good result. And that means that for the time being now until end September, we have an amount of guarantee already signed in terms of operations by the implementing partners of 9.3, so almost half, which is also very good implementation speed, I would say. So this is kind of very broad and in short the implementation in terms of numbers. If we look at the capacity to mobilize private investment, we see that the InvestEU is now on track to mobilize the 218 billion in public and private investment by the end of 2023, with 141 billion coming from private sources. So the anticipated multiplier effect is confirmed, and the multiplier effect was calculated at 14.7, something like this, as it is defined, so anticipated, and then we have the kind of the effective multiplier that comes because the fact that we don't need to provision for the full amount of the guarantees, but only 40% of it. So we have like a 36, 37 multiplier. And we have already, I mean, we see already that InvestEU is present in about 25 member states with different amounts, etc. But it is important that it is widespread presence. And looking at the additionality, there again, we see that even if we don't have a super exact mathematical way to, to match causality from InvestEU to the specific investment, but we see that 95% of project promoters confirm that they wouldn't proceed without InvestEU financing. So again, it's not a mathematical thing to be taken at face value, but I think it indicates quite clearly a very strong trend and in terms of additionality. Now, coming to the core of the findings of the evaluation, let me first say a couple of things on the advisory hub. And here, indeed, this is quite crucial for the development of InvestEU funds project pipeline. And we have that, we see that with the implementing partners on the advisory, they have managed to have a very diversified range of advisory support. at all levels. I mean, EU and national, so cross-border and national. And I think that also one can see in the evaluation that the type of the advisory support is very targeted to the clients and to the level, so being cross-border or national. So I think it is very targeted and in that sense with a strong impact. And in terms of geographical outreach, that's also one can see quite a good spread across member states, and a good expression of satisfaction of the clients of the advisory activity. Maybe one point that comes up in the evaluation that would require some attention is that it looks like in certain areas or in certain places the role of the advisor is not so well known or not sufficiently well known to make sure that those that would benefit from using it actually go and ask for it and use it. So that's an interesting finding. Then we have the InvestEU portal. The InvestEU portal is, I think, well known. Again, it's also difficult to really assess how much of the matches or the funding come really from there, but we see that there is quite a lot of interest. High amount of projects published, 1,500. We see that there are at least around 50 matching events that have taken place with some concrete results, and that there is a place where indeed the promoters and those that are looking for funding and the funders can really meet. Again, this also looks like in the evaluation something to be thought through a little bit more, how to enhance the effectiveness of the portal. And then in terms of more general conclusions, let me go through the key findings on that front. I think that one is that this type of approach of using budgetary guarantees in a context of very scarce budgetary resources proves to be very efficient. And I already referred that it has a higher multiplier effect and even higher because we have this partial provisioning. So in the next round, when we think about how to design the new budget in general, the MFF, this is an element very important because I think that the constrained environment will not change significantly. Maybe we would be positively surprised, but at least not significantly. So we need to keep that very much in mind. The second finding is that now that InvestEU is fully operational, we see a very important impact in the real economy. And as I said, difficult to translate that into the numbers. If you look at in particular, the external evaluation, you see because numbers were available for those that started the activity early enough, but otherwise they were not yet there. But we receive the reporting, etc., very regularly, and if we look, I mean, there is already a big difference, let's say, between March and September, to reflect the activity of the newcomers in the implementation. We also see that InvestEU it plays a critical role to address EU's urgent and escalating as well as emerging investment needs, and it shows flexibility to respond to emerging policy priorities. And here, I think that in the context of looking for simplicity and navigating in the complex landscape of changing policy priorities, etc., having an instrument that can adjust, that even if we need to define a lot of things ex ante, we can have adjustments in the way, and we don't need to redefine the whole thing from scratch, is really an important feature, particularly in the current context of again, new and emerging priorities. The fact that we have all these diverse setup in terms of implementing partners also offers a very good opportunity to have a comprehensive range of financial products that are there, that are different, and that they are available for matching different types of market failures. and different types of suboptimal investment conditions in the member states. So that's also something, this diversity and the targeted manner in which the instruments are designed, that it is very important to mobilize private investment. And the fact that InvestEU is there, I think in the evaluation we see also that this really helps the implementing partners to engage with higher risk counterparts, to deploy riskier financial products, and to finance activities that have really a higher risk by definition. So that's also very important. Then the fact that we have this umbrella instrument, despite all the calls for streamlining and simplification that we are well aware of, I think that has already provided a huge degree of synergies and simplification in the way all these financial instruments are being implemented and being managed. Now, looking ahead, what all these things tell us for the next MFF and the next steps? Well, I just said about simplification. I think that here is really something that we need to go deeper into the specifics of what we mean and what we want and what can be done. And I think there will always be a trade-off between reporting accountability and compliance with the EU horizontal rules, financial rules, and some others like state aid or similar, and reducing as much as possible what is not strictly necessary to comply with these legal requirements. So for sure we have already proposed things, the Commission has already proposed things, and for sure there is room for improvement. So here it's an area where I think working together will be very useful to identify what can be done differently in a more efficient manner. Second point, and just to say that on that one, I think that we are fully convinced. I mean, we at the Commission, we are fully convinced, but I think it's more a matter of looking for how. And now we have a commissioner that is in charge of simplification, so we are in good hands. It's in charge of financial economics and simplification. Then obviously financial capacity. What can I say here? I think the evaluation shows very clearly that more financial capacity for this type of instrument is necessary. We are now already, as I said, about, a huge part of the available resources are already committed, which means that we are now in 2024 and we have to go until 27. So clearly there is an issue. For now, before the next MFF, what can we do? Well, obviously we are looking and pushing and making kind of publicity in brackets to vis-a-vis the member states, that they use the member states compartment if they have still resources available and that they are available, which is the case for most of them. That's clearly a way to go, and I think as much as we can do that, it's important to be sure that all the available resources are used and they can be very well used through InvestEU. We are also looking whether there is an option to do some top-ups from other programs, but I have to say I think the option is pretty limited, so we should not have high expectations on that. And the third way is to see how we can optimize the efficiency by combining the InvestEU with portfolios of legacy instruments such as FC, Innofin, or CEF. So those are kind of the three ways that we will explore and use and develop as much as we can in order to bridge the time between now and 27 and to be able to continue using InvestEU. But obviously for the next budgetary discussion, we have to keep in mind, all the financial gaps, the market failures, the demand that is out there, and the efficiency of InvestEU in terms of where to allocate the resources. particularly, I'm come back to that, particularly because it's an instrument that it is not tied to one policy priority. It is an instrument that can serve multi-policy priorities by being efficient, because we are using the same type of approach. And that's, I think, a very important conclusion here. And the third or fourth, now I don't remember, is we think that it will be important looking ahead to build on what we have built together. This has been a very difficult exercise to develop the InvestEU, to develop the guarantee agreements with every single implementing partner. Now we are in a good place. We are up and running, and we think it is important that such kind of financial instrument or instruments that the EU is going to develop doesn't need to start from scratch, because we would lose a lot of time and a lot of efficiency. And we think that with again the scarce resources, one has to be able to go to the real economy as quick as possible. And with this, I leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this very comprehensive presentation, and also for sharing with us how you see the things evolving forward. I would like now to move to the panel. Let me introduce the panelists of tonight. I would like to start with Laure Blachard-Prunac, member of the Investment Committee of InvestEU, at my left hand. Next to her, Sophie Barbier. She's the Director of the European Affairs Department at Caisse des Dépôts et Consignations, CDC. And then next to her, Francesco Mele, CEO of CDP Equity, Cassa Depositi e Prestiti. And then last but not least, to my right, Vitomir Miles Ragus, Head of Office of European Relations at the Council of Europe Development Bank. So we have 4 panelists. They will bring in 4 different views. I would like to start by giving the floor to the 2 national promotional banks, and I would like to start in particular with Francesco, and maybe sharing with us your thoughts about the evaluation and in general where we stand with InvestEU, bringing in really your perspective.
No, thank you for the invitation. I'm very proud to represent CDP as an early implementing partner. We are very committed to the program, and we invested a lot of effort in order to make sure can realize objective in Italy. I listened very carefully to the assessment, and which I think there are a number of very important insights. Maybe let me focus on a few of them. First, the open architecture approach, we believe is very important and has proved to be a success, allow to tailor objective to specific national needs, and as a national promotional bank, clearly we can cover specific investment gaps. So for us, it's a very important feature of the program. We understand this feature require a coordination effort, and the coordination effort sometimes can be very important. But I think there are a number of positive examples in the work of coordinating effort between various implementing partners. Let me mention, for instance, the effort to launch the Marguerite Tree, where we work together with CDC, ECO, BGK, and KfW, and this is a very important initiative, and it's already deploying investment. So this is an area where we can prove that working together is something that can be achieved. Okay, so all in all, I think that this approach allows to also cover a diversified number of needs. So we really appreciate and would like to continue with this approach. As a second point, there is a high demand for InvestEU. We received this feedback from final beneficiaries, and so the budgetary issue is something that we are very aware, and we hope this can be prolonged, extended, and also we believe any, let's say, reduction would be a disappointment for a number of beneficiaries. So we hope, I understand there are a few potential let's say, source of support, and we hope that they can be implemented. So, of course, the last point has to do with the simplification of the procedure. Anytime you implement something new, of course, there are activities to be carried out. We've been using InvestEU mostly for startup venture capital, which in Italy is underdeveloped but is gaining momentum. Okay, and a number of activity, and I'm referring also, for instance, to the state aid compliance approach, is very demanding for us, and we believe that this rule could be revised, considering the unique characteristic of the program as a repayable financial instrument, in order to diversify the approach that can be taken vis-à-vis grants. And so we hope this can simplify the activity, because would probably extend even more the success of the program.
Thanks a lot. Sophie, I would like to ask you the same question. How are you seeing the InvestEU until now?
Thank you, and first of all, thank you for having me in this panel. Thank you to SEPS and GDP, and thank you for having CDC here. So we are always happy to discuss InvestEU. I am a little bit worried, but because I think that we all agree on this panel, so it will be a boring panel if this is the case, but I will try to add some things to what have already been said on this evaluation. My first comment concerns the method, because I would like to thank the Commission, because they decided to have the implementing partners as observers in the intergroup service that discussed the findings of the external report. And I think that this is also very illustrative of what is InvestEU. InvestEU is to be able to take on board also partners and to have this very inclusive approach. I think that it is also important for Europe from a political point of view. But maybe I will turn to the report, and I think that the main conclusion for me is that InvestEU is a success. So that's quite obvious. In fact, this instrument, based on open architecture, has proved to be efficient. And Elena Flores described very well why. Maybe I would like also to underline the fact that it was not so obvious, and in a way it was a risky bet at the beginning of this InvestEU, but it was a success because implementing partners answered the call. So we have many implementing partners, and it was not evident, in fact. We have, of course, IFIs, we have NPBIs, the big ones, the smaller ones, all over Europe, and some that are familiar with European programs, but some, and I have to confess that this is the case for CDC, that are a little bit new in this type of areas. So it is really important I think it is really important to underline this. Of course, and it has been said, the diversity of IPs leads to the diversity of instruments and products, reflecting the diversity of local needs and the diverse way you can fill the investment gap that exists in Europe. In this report, you will see that there are numerous examples of the way you can try to boost long-term investment in Europe, and this is also very interesting. And maybe to sum it up, I think that InvestEU is a revolution in terms of implementation. For the first time, it has been said already, but we have to realize that for the first time, a European investment program has been implemented through a network of national and European implementing partners. This is really a radical change. And setting aside indeed the necessary technical adjustments, I think that now everything is in place to roll out a new way of implementing these European investment programs in the context of a very constrained budget. And this network of diverse IPs, this ability to deliver on new products, to take more risks, to attract private money on the IP side, the implementing partner side, but also on the European Commission side. This capacity to work together are real assets for Europe and for the coming years.
Thank you very much. Maybe before I move, there are quite a few chairs free. Please just come and sit. So far so good. So all the assessments were very positive. I'm now turning to Vitomir. The Council of Europe Development Bank is quite different from National Promotional Bank. What is your view?
So we were also a volunteer in this process, and actually, you know, in most cases, no one really likes to volunteer. But in this case, because it's a new product and because for the first time, the social sector and social sector infrastructure was being considered seriously in Brussels. You know, for years, we have basically worked with DG NEAR, and they also started with social being eligible, but kind of moved away. So we were very happy to participate. We worked with you on the methodology in the beginning. Then, you know, we moved to our actual clients, setting up meetings with the clients that we had, with the outside consultants, and then we read all the drafts of the evaluation report. And of course, by participating throughout, you know, at the end there was good alignment. And indeed, yeah, like everyone else here has said or will say, it's been quite a success, and we're very happy to go forward, and even in the next budget as well. But pluses and minuses, let me just emphasize 2 points. Number one, that was very surprising for me. And number two, where I think really more emphasis could be given as we move forward. For me, the additionality factor was really a surprise, you know, that 95% of the clients, borrowers, basically said to your interviewers that they would not have been able to get the deal without the InvestEU framework. I think this is impressive, and I really look forward, you know, how this indicator is gonna look in the future. So, you know, additionality, you know, for us, you know, is a tough word to understand, to conceptualize, and, you know, to show 95% success. This is very good. The other issue that's very important for us, and it's really not, let's say, an important issue from a policy perspective, but the operational perspective, and this is the monitoring and reporting requirement. This is where we actually lose people. We lose bankers. We lose people in the back office, in the middle office. It becomes too complicated for them, too demanding, too much time, and it requires new resources. For instance, you know, last Friday we had our, you know, management board, and the budget for next year was considered, where we asked for additional people, and the member states said no way. So, and I think, this is my personal view, that actually the information technology is, all these new innovations are really kind of misleading us into thinking that it's so easy to get all this information and to get it updated all the time, but that's not the fact. So to conclude, yeah, we are very happy to see that Mr. Dombrovskis has taken on the mandate to simplify things, and we really hope for the next, 7 years that it will be much easier and to make it, yeah, even more productive. Thank you.
Thanks very much. That was very interesting. I would like now to move to Laure. Laure, you are in a somehow different position than all the other speakers, but still very important, the one of the investment committee. What is your view?
Thank you, Cynthia, and thank you for the invitation. Indeed, the investment committee, for those not familiar, we're part of the governance. We are 12 independent members, so I could be maybe a bit more outspoken than the other speakers who are less independent than me. But there are a few things that have been said that I fully concur to, and especially maybe I'll start with the point on simplification. And what Elena said about simplification, but for what and where exactly? Because we are all happy here praising a very broad and diverse program. And for example, the open architecture is a huge progress compared to FC. But it obviously brings some complexity. Additionality as well. I mean, as the investment committee, we are part of the complexity by definition. We are an additional body for in the governance. And this is why there needs to probably be a bit more deep dive on what we are trying to say when we say simplification. And there are some things which are excellent under InvestEU. I just mentioned open architecture. The additionality. To me personally, I find also the drive, the policy drive given by the Commission DGs is really impressive, and it's completely new compared to what was done under FC, and is the DGs, policy DGs are much more engaged in than some historic financial instruments they had before. So there are some parts of InvestEU where it's de facto complex. And that should be, in a way, recognized that if you bring diversity, there needs to be a minimum of management of the complexity. And there are some parts where even ourselves on the committee, we sit and we see that this is very burdensome for the implementing partners. I'm thinking especially, well, reporting and monitoring is one where, in a way, we are, again, completely part of the loop, because we are the ones often asking for reporting and monitoring on framework operations. But I'm more thinking about what I observe on the communication angle. So typically, what we all agree on in the IC is that there needs to be much more communication about the program than what we have now. And there's really a simple question of budget constraint. So I'll give you an example. There was mentioned before by Elena that the advisory hub is not so well known sometimes on the ground. It's very difficult for the team in Luxembourg or Brussels to organize events in each of the country where InvestEU operates now. Because simply, I mean, that would require some specific budget. And so where I'm linking the reporting and monitoring and the communication is that if you ask data endlessly to implementing partners, but you don't really know why you're using this data, or this is, one ask from the IC, one event, one off over there, etc. That is, I think this is what Vitomir just said, is very difficult to manage. It's not because you have IT tools that it's getting better, on the contrary. And so there's really a thought to have about how we could leverage all this diversity and show it off much more on the communication front, and picking up the data, getting the reporting according to these needs. And I'm saying communication because I don't know if you remember, but when InvestEU was launched, there was no IRA, and the US paid a lot of attention to what we were doing, and they were actually quite envious that the EU managed to launch this big program with 26 billion and the advisory, etc. And another one that has been very envious that reached out sometimes to us is the UK. they look at the blended finance fund of InvestEU as a prototype they would need for the UK economy to restart. So there's really a potential there that to me is underexploited, and this is to be linked to the simplification and the communication issues that were raised in the report.
Thanks very much for adding this element. So there are some aspects which I've come across all the speakers with maybe some different emphasis. What I would like to ask to the speaker now is actually to give us some examples of what has been done. I mean, that there is quite a general agreement that basically InvestEU was successful, but I think it's interesting to say, okay, what has been done? I would like to ask you to be quite brief because the time is quite short. But maybe we start with Francesco. I mean, there was the riskiness, the aspect of riskiness was mentioned several times. So equity is part of addressing these aspects. Maybe you can give us some
Absolutely, and I'm a bit biased, but equity is my product, and GDP Equity is committed to investing more than 500 million in venture capital by 2027. And we're already very much advanced because there are about 60% or 300 million that has been invested and committed through 4 funds. Almost 500 startups were financed. So it's a very, I would say, tangible evidence of what has been done. Sector moved from life science, semiconductor, energy tech, decarbonization. So really, it's a very good and wide range of sector which were touched, and again, VC is in its early stage in Italy, but InvestEU provide a very tangible contribution. We also, in terms of other example, we believe Margaret 3 is a very good example of coordination, but also the result. 30% of the fund has been invested. About 6 investments were carried out across 5 different member states. And again, here, all the activity in sustainable infrastructure in energy, transport, telecommunication were covered, and in a number of different states. We are now focusing also to support data center and cloud infrastructure. Europe is very much behind. You know, the so-called hyperscaler, you know, represent 60-70% of the market share, and you know, artificial intelligence. We believe we need this infrastructure. We need to do more to make sure that these infrastructure are developed.
Thanks a lot. Sophie, maybe some cases from France?
Yes, of course. So I will not come back on Margaret 3, but indeed it's a very good example, and maybe also an example of what the limitations we can have in terms of state aid regulation and the compulsory part of 30% of private investors at the holding, at the level of the fund, but I will not come into this type of details, but happy to discuss it later. No, maybe I will. I think that it is interesting indeed to provide an example from InvestEU Advisory Hub. So in CDC, we signed the administrative agreement to roll out a program called PVD+, which is a complement to a national program, Petite Ville de Demain, and it allows very small cities to get support to have some sustainable financing for their revitalization projects. And I think it is really interesting because it demonstrates what NPBIs can bring into this type of program, because we are able to combine European policy, InvestEU, and with the objectives of, for instance, environmental transition in this case, but also to combine it with a national program. And this is really important to have this approach. But I would like also to comment on this example to react on what I heard concerning communication. And I think that indeed communication is really key. And it requires some effort. It's not necessarily expensive, but it requires time and a local network. And NPBIs, such as Caisse des Dépôts, we have a local, regional network, and we are able to communicate, to organize small round tables everywhere in France to present our program, PVD+, and to make the cities aware of its existence. And to do so, we also use partnership with associations and so on and so forth. That's why I say it's not necessarily expensive, but it requires time, it requires good knowledge of local actors. And I think that's really the illustration of what we can do as national promotional institutions.
Thank you very much. And then I would like to move to Vitomir. CEB has a special mission, so maybe some examples also in this area. If we can have the slide.
Yes. Yeah, indeed. Our focus is social infrastructure, and within InvestEU, we're only active in the social investments and skills window. So when we started preparing to get involved with InvestEU, we saw basically a perfect alignment, with those priority sectors, priority investment sectors, where DG Employment, DG ECFIN, and other DGs involved, where they saw major market gaps, or as we call it, market failures, and these are the areas where we are really involved and where we would like to do more. But the bankers amongst us, when we saw this, we said right away, this is going to be very tough for a number of reasons. And one of the reasons is that most of the deals in these segments are very small. But we were afraid to say this to our management, that it's going to be tough. And so we decided to document it and to be able to discuss it with you as well. And so we have done 16 countries, EU member states so far, and we're doing 2 more at this time. And the basic conclusion is, you're absolutely right. There are major market gaps, major market failures in these 6 priority segments. But, most of the deals there are under 2 million euros. And for institutions like us, this is not very cost effective. Depending on the size of the country, perhaps in the housing sectors, the amounts go to 5 million, 10, perhaps 20. And 40 million deals that MPBIs and the EIB and us would like to see is perhaps 1 per country in the east, 2 or 3 in the countries in the south, 2 or 3 in the countries in the north. So basically, our involvement so far is not primarily in these sectors or segments where we want it to be, but in supporting micro-lenders, which is also very important. And we actually had a guarantee facility like this for supporting smaller micro-lenders in EU member states and the neighborhood east and the Western Balkans. So when InvestEU came in, it was really big support, because the little money that we had, we were able to basically switch completely to Southeast Europe and neighborhood east, and then use InvestEU money EU member states. So we're doing much more micro-lending support than we ever thought that we would, which is a good thing. And on this issue, basically, that we are lagging in these priority segments, we're working on this. And ECFIN actually has been very supportive. DG Employment has been very supportive. So the thinking there is we really have to get MPBIs involved with us in some way to basically work with us in their national markets. Perhaps also commercial banks and mutual lenders in smaller countries can get involved as well. And the other issue is the building new aggregators. And in the past, we have done this, for instance, in France, together with CDC. So with the help of ECFIN and the advisory board, there's a workshop, work stream on the social sectors, and we're moving in this direction, and I think ECFIN will organize a special session in November, February period to address this issue, how to help these 6 priority segments that I've spoken of.
Thanks very much. So really a very large variety of initiatives from equity to social housing. And by the way, we will have a commissioner for housing, so also this problem will be addressed. And I now move to Laure. You have seen, I guess, a lot of projects. So maybe also your insights.
Yes, indeed. Very quickly. So I'm on the RID window, Research, Innovation, Digitization. EIB is a big consumer of this window, as you might have seen in the numbers. So they have especially a product that you might see, it's venture debt. And it basically is a product that wouldn't exist without the EU guarantee. They wouldn't be able to do it. And their EIB supports life science, future tech, and clean tech companies. It's massive. And so we have framework operations which are quite substantial. It's about 4 billion that has been invested. It's progressively invested, and basically that's in terms of the financial capacity issue that Elena raised earlier. There's a real potential issue of continuity for this kind of products. One specific example we saw at the committee, because we see the projects above 50 million euro, was, for example, a company that was developing electrolyzers for their clients to produce hydrogen. So there's a lot in the hydrogen industry. We see a lot of these projects. There's also the emblematic H2 green steel that you might have heard of, which is in Sweden, a very large project to do green hydrogen. And the batteries production sector has been very vibrant and coming a lot to InvestEU. BPI France was another good example we noticed in the RID window, because there is this push in BPI France to re-industrialize the French economic landscape. And so they ask for the EU guarantee specifically to target industrial SMEs and small mid-caps. And they are really entities they couldn't finance on their own books unless they use the EU guarantee as a collateral. And then you have GDP equity here, which is another typical case of something where InvestEU brings firepower. And another one that we saw coming quite often is InvestNL, which is basically it's a new NPB, and they are specifically doing equity and specifically in sectors under the RID window, so we see them a lot. And it's a lot of deep tech, food tech as well. There are some cases of artificial meat, which we had very heated debate about that, actually. Yes, but this is where innovation brings you. It's like, do we, in the middle of the agricultural, crisis, we had submissions for artificial meat, which, as you might know, is not allowed as a product in Europe. But there is some research and development, and this is a market which is fast expanding in the US, in Switzerland, in Singapore. So some European companies want to stay ahead.
Okay, so we close with quite an example, let's say. So we have only 15 minutes left, but I would like to go for another quick round, because I think it's really time to look forward. And I would like to hear from the panel, basically, how can we enhance the effectiveness of InvestEU when we think forward, really based on the experience that we have. Elena already put some points on the table, but what would be your suggestion for improvement Francesco, I would like to start with you.
Thank you. I think a number of points were already mentioned, so I will be pretty short. But to begin, let me remember that our group CEO, Darius Canapieco, with his position as president of the European Long-Term Investor Association, issue a position paper outlining 10 recommendations. And these recommendations are pretty much aligned with what we heard tonight. So I think there is clearly building consensus around what needs to be done to make sure that InvestEU 2.0 is effective as the current program is. And we believe probably that, and this is something that has been said, there are probably 3 activities. One is making sure there are enough resources. I also mentioned the fact that it has been pretty difficult for direct equity investment to be carried out, and this is something where probably something can be done to make sure that resources are directed and can be applied. Second has to do with the state aid, let's say, consistency approach. And this is something that probably, particularly for as SME company, create a lot of administrative burden that makes it really them very difficult to accept an instrument, and that can be, on the other side, extremely effective and additional compared to the let's say market tools. Last one is simplification at all level, but I would say in general reporting, I know it's due, but it's something that sometimes, again, particularly for startup, can be very difficult to put in place, and we would encourage a progressive simplification effort, let's say.
Thank you very much. That was very effective. Capacity, state aid, simplification.
Maybe concerning simplification, just to prolong what has been said, I would say that we can streamline requirements just by relying on the internal processes of implementing partners that have gone through the pillar assessment. In fact, this is as simple as that. We are required to do many things, but we have to take into account that our internal processes have already been audited. And so maybe some simplification can be easily done on this type of requirements. Maybe I think I will not repeat it, or I repeat it, but just like that, I think that InvestEU is an important first step. And maybe we can also prepare for the next MFF to take the next step with always open architecture. I heard that the President von der Leyen was willing to, of course, streamline processes, to increase flexibility by cutting down the number of programs, having a policy-based program rather than a program-based architecture. But I am convinced that the more centralized the priority setting and the steering, the more decentralized the implementation should be, to make sure that a limited number of instruments can address the diversity of local markets. I know that we don't have many time just to mention some ideas that were, I think, present in LT papers concerning the outlook. Of course, it is necessary to try to put all European financial instruments supporting investment under an InvestEU type framework. So it's just a prolongation of what has been done with InvestEU. Maybe we should also try to have some kind of blending under InvestEU, because blending is also a powerful tool to unlock investment, even if the leverage is lower than the one of guarantee. And this could lead maybe if I can suggest something to the Commission, to the creation of a fourth pillar within the InvestEU framework for a blended facility. And this is only an idea that was present in the LT paper of, I think, a few, it was? Strategic outlook, sorry, Martina. So in the strategic outlook, you will see that there is this idea. So I think that InvestEU offers us a lot of possibilities to try to boost long-term investment in Europe.
Thank you very much. Vitomi.
Three quick thoughts. Number one is simplification. I spoke a lot about it, but others have as well. And I think we're moving in that direction with help of Cassa Depositi e Prestiti and LT, with their recommendations. And one of them that I think we're very close on is really to eliminate this, what we call the third audit. Because we as a bank, we go through a financial audit with our regular auditors. We are audited internally by our own people. And now we are required to get a third audit for InvestEU. And this is problematic in a number of ways. And I think we have some support in some DGs already. And hopefully we'll be able to break down the DG budget together to save all of us some money. So number two issue, back to how to make the InvestEU a little bit more, let's say, effective and productive in the social sector, but I think this also applies to the Eastern member states, where, first of all, they need lots of support in preparing projects. So the advisory hub is very, very important. And then the other element is the aggregators, putting together a number of small projects together. So Advisory Hub already has this option, but we really have to make, let's say, larger effort in how to formalize this and how to make it operational. For social sector, the blended finance is mentioned, and unfortunately, it's very hard to crowd in private sector for social sector projects. So it has to come through some form of subsidies, and maybe blended finance is a way to go, or to actually increase the amount of the guarantee, not 50%, but perhaps 60, 70. In our case, when we have very high social value projects, we provide co-financing up to 90%. And I think that's enough. Thank you.
Thanks very much. There's also the 3 points were very well spotted. Laure, your view?
Yes. So two things. I think there's one point about state aid rules that was mentioned a few times. Our perspective on this in the investment committee is that there's indeed an issue with the way the rules are applied in the program. Sometimes it's too onerous, and it contradicts the fact that we are trying to finance strategic investments. At the same time, obviously, we are fully aware about the need to comply with state aid. And that, to me, is more a political conversation that needs to take place. That I think the member state tried to have when there was a STEP proposal. There was, back in 2018 already, an attempt to have a window under InvestEU for strategic investment that failed. And so this conversation is coming back a few times, and it's never really concluded. With the Draghi report, with the competitiveness outlook that he drew and the different transformations he mentioned, I think that conversation needs to take place, and that would have hopefully very practical consequences for InvestEU that would improve the program. So to me, that's where really the effectiveness would be. And then that, again, on communication and perception, the fact that there would be a sort of deal on state aid rules which is different from the current statu quo, that would be a huge signal to the market that there are some specific investments that really are strategic for Europe and have basically opened doors for financing, both from public banks and the private market. So that's one which I think is the most important and the most political that would need to take place to improve the effectiveness. And the other one is because we keep hearing about the implementing partners struggling with the guarantee agreements and the delays, and what is to me really striking is the fact that we built this whole infrastructure of InvestEU with the open architecture in a few years, on top of it with the hit of COVID and the change of MFF, etc. And all this happened in a very short period of time. And it's almost like building a bank without calling it a bank. It's a guarantee fund with no legal entity right now except for commission. And there is something about making this infrastructure, the pipes where the EU guarantee can flow, a bit more permanent. And then the policy directions can change because they have to change depending on the crisis that Europe has to face. But on the infrastructure and the relationships between the implementing partners, the Commission, the budget was mentioned, the Common Provisioning Fund, etc. All this, in my view, should become much more permanent than what it is today.
Thanks very much. I think that was a nice way to conclude this panel debate. I'm afraid we won't have time for questions, but instead I would like to invite on stage Martina Colombo from Cassa Depositi e Prestiti to summarize this very rich discussion.
Thank you, Cinzia. Please stay. I'll just stand. Sit down. So thank you all for coming. Thank you all for coming and accepting this invitation. InvestEU is a little bit my baby too, I can say. I've spent some time at the Commission trying to make it start. So I see many familiar faces here. Thank you again for your support along the way. It's halfway. We still have a long way forward. And many things have been said, so I won't repeat what the colleagues pointed out. Just reinforce the message that we are a partnership. Commission, implementing partners. We got organized to try to fix the issues and the bugs. So we speak a lot. We try to make things simpler. We try to explain the investment committee that all this diversity is good, right? Took a while, but now it's all working. Helmut is here with us as well, is conveying the messages to the Commission. Commission, please listen to us, because we have good recommendations to give you for the next MFF. We need continuity. We need this to stay in place. We just try to fine-tune a bit the rules, and we will deploy effectively as we have done so far. Thank you. Now, you're all invited downstairs for the cocktail. Yes. And follow us so we can continue the discussion downstairs. Thank you.
Thanks very much to everyone.